Welcome to Conversations on Resilient Leadership. I'm Jim de Vries, founder of Enhance International Group, and your host of today's episode. This series is where we dive deep into the minds of leaders who have not only navigated through uncertainty, but have emerged stronger, more innovative, and more resilient. Whether you're a seasoned executive or an emerging leader, each episode offers unique access to strategies and insights of top leaders who are redefining leadership in today's dynamic environment. Today, we have the privilege of sitting down with a remarkable guest, Assad Mirza, CEO of Infinity Opex from the great state of Wisconsin. Assad is a visionary executive with over 20 years of experience in operations and supply chain management. He has an extraordinary track record of transforming organizations across various industries and has become a trusted advisor to those looking to optimize their operations, enhance productivity, and drive sustainable growth. Having had the pleasure of working very closely with Assad for over the past 8 years, I can personally attest to his innovative thinking and hands-on approach, his humility, approachability, and openness to listening and learning makes him a leader, well-liked at all levels of the organization. Welcome to the podcast, Assad.
I really appreciate it, Jim. Thank you for having me. And I'm honored that we're going to talk about leadership. And you asked me to discuss this very, very critical and I guess timely topic as well. You and I, we have done many projects together, and it is always a pleasure. The interesting thing is that I always learn something whenever we interact. So I really appreciate that.
Great. Thanks, Assad. So I think we'll get started here with some leadership questions for you. So maybe you could just define, what does leadership mean to you? How do you define it, and how do you embellish it in who you are and what you do?
I think what we want to do today is just have kind of a very honest, gory discussion about leadership,
Very good.
if I can use that word. Okay.
Okay.
And you know, and because it's not pretty. Okay. You know, this is not the John Wayne movie, right? So I consider myself one of those fortunate people that were at the right place at the right times over and over again. Okay. And I think the way it worked out was that along the way, I always had wonderful teachers. Okay. And I don't say the word teacher in a sense of a formal title. I say that is there is opportunities always to learn, right? And you learn wherever you have, you know, availability of something to be learned, right? And that could be, I have learned things from my own pets. Okay. So I mean, so you have to be open enough to take the advantage of that. So that's my background. I'm just one of those people that just happen to be at the right place at the right time with the right teachers, and learn a lot of things along the way. And I make a lot of mistakes. So that's the best way to learn. You make mistakes and you learn, and then you try not to do the same thing again. So along the way, you know, I mean, I have had the opportunity to work in various different industries, right? From that's where I started my career, in the automotive industry. So, and then from there, you know, food and beverage, a little bit of service, you know, other industrial manufacturing, you name it, right? So had seen a lot of different things, right? Worked with a lot of wonderful people. So great learning experience. Okay. Now, the question that you asked, right, about the leadership. So I want to take a moment and kind of talk about what that means to me. So word leader is kind of interesting because the very first part of it is lead. Then becomes the leader, right? So if you think about the lead part, the lead implies that we know where we are leading to.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are a leader, or if you consider yourself a leader, or if you want to be a leader, the number one thing that is absolutely critical, you have to know where you're leading to. So that's the one piece, right? And then the second piece is I want to break down kind of this stereotype that is out there, right? So when we think about leaders, leaders are, it's not just simply, oh, it's going to be somebody that, has a bunch of people following them, reporting to them, or whatever. Leadership has two pieces to it. It has the individual and then the collective, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what that means, for you to be a leader, first you have to be able to lead yourself. Then you earn the right to lead others. I see over and over again that we call these people leaders and they're not even leading themselves. They don't even have a purpose, a vision for their own life, right?
That's a great
So then
point.
how are they going to lead others?
So you
Then
have
it's just,
to, so if I could summarize, if you don't know yourself, if you don't know what you're passionate about, and you haven't figured that out, you can't become an effective leader
that's
because you
exactly
don't know
right.
who you are. I love that. That's a great point, Assad. That's very insightful because sometimes you say, I want to be the leader of the company, but you don't understand what you are really good at, what
No,
your what your propensities and what your passions are.
that's it. Well, and then, the other piece of leadership is, right, to be an effective and a good leader, you have to have some principles, you have to have some values.
Hmm.
So if you don't know yourself, how are you going to establish those values,
Yes,
right? And then the second piece of it, since you don't have any values, any principles, then when the tough times come, how are you going to actually hold your ground and said, I am going to do the right thing? Because you haven't established that yourself, what is the right thing? Because you do not know what your values are, you do not know what your principles are. So how are you going to determine, when it's time to take the stand,
that's awesome. I love it. That
right?
makes so much more sense, you know,
Sure.
hearing from that perspective.
No, appreciate that. I mean, so that's the idea, right? That I think we need to start having the conversation from that standpoint, right? And then the other piece of it is, now if we keep going down the path, right? So there is that piece of the leadership. Then the other piece of the leadership is self accountability.
Hmm.
I mean, you go read these books, right? I'm a reader, right? I read a lot of books. Now I'm hooked on this Audible where I listen to a lot of books as well. And when every time I read about leadership, anytime it always goes back to this, like how you are going to, you know, lead others. Great, that's fine. But end of the day, the starting point once again is you. So even if you're going to lead others, first you have to define what that vision is, what that roadmap is. Because if you have not defined that vision, what that roadmap, how you're going to get there, if you haven't done that, then how are you going to ask others to follow you?
Absolutely. You have to define your vision. You have to be a visionary. And
That's it,
there's a lot of books on the visionary leader,
right?
probably 100, over 100 books on the visionary leader. It
Right,
seems to be a common theme, to your point.
right. And I mean, and you have to promise me one thing, that down the road we will have to do another podcast on culture. And
Oh, culture, that's a fun one.
right, and the reason that I bring that up is that just like culture, we have done the same thing to leadership, where we have made this thing very elusive. And it's like, no, it's not. At the end of the day, right, these are all it is the ability to take actions.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have that ability to create that vision, take those actions, and now you have the ability to influence others to follow that vision, to follow that journey with you. There is nothing elusive about it. Is just, you have to be real, and you have to say, okay, I have a vision, now I got to work on bringing other people with me.
Right, right, right. Yeah, that's the start of it, right?
Right.
So that's the start of the journey, is getting that vision out there, getting people to follow, and then what's the next step for you after that? Just following that, to continue to be a good leader or a great leader.
Yeah. So I mean, for me is quite simple and straightforward. I believe in simplicity.
Yeah,
and and at least, I mean, for me, it has been a very, I mean, I like to break everything down into steps and into processes, right?
sure.
So I have done the exact same thing from the leadership standpoint as well, right? Okay, step one, that what I have to do, I gotta have a vision.
Mm-hmm.
Step two is, now I have to engage others, that they have to share that vision with me. So there is a little bit of collaboration, there's a little bit of that salesmanship, whatever you want to call it, because you have to, first of all, engage, and truly engage. This is not a top-down thing that I created this vision, now all of you guys got to go do it.
Yeah.
So you got to get that feedback, you got to get that input, you adjust along the way, do what you need to do, and then end of the day, once you have that alignment, then you get to work on, okay, how are we going to now go execute that vision?
Mm-hmm.
That's when you start to talk about strategies. That's when you start to talk about, short-term, long-term goals, right? And then you keep going down the list of, how we're going to track our progress, who's going to do what, right? So then
Right.
then it turns into a very execution oriented, activity.
Mm-hmm.
But in the beginning, it always starts with a blank piece of paper.
Mm-hmm.
It always starts with, you have to create a vision. And now I'll tell you one thing, and I know this is going to sound, it's going to irritate a lot of people, but we're known for that.
Yeah.
As a leader, you have to start with a blank piece of paper.
Yeah. Well, so how often do you refresh that blank piece of paper? So you go down, you execute, you're going down the road, and you get the momentum going. Got your coalition of engaged, enthusiastic folks on your team. You built that coalition, so to speak, and now you're going down the road and you're executing. At what point in time do you refresh? How do you find that balance in from your perspective?
So that's an excellent point here. So I'm one of those people, right? I look at the vision itself. So there is a difference between a vision and a strategy, right?
Right.
So the vision itself, it has to be bold enough, it
Mm-hmm.
has to be big enough, that you should not be going there and changing it every other month, even
Or
every
every other
year,
year.
right? Because it has to be, because the whole point of vision, number one, right? Because I mean, if you think about, if you
Sure.
look at throughout history, even where we are today, when we talk about vision, we're talking about imagination, right? You are imagining something, you're visualizing something. So what you're visualizing, the reality is that it did not exist before.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it existed before, right? Then it's just matter of strategy of achieving something that already exists,
Well said. Yeah.
which is okay. That's all right.
Yeah.
Then at that point, you change your style, you change your focus, and you focus on execution.
Hmm.
But if we're talking about that visionary part of leadership, right? Then that means number one, you have to imagine something. Then it will become a reality. So if you're going to imagine something, if you're going to create a vision of something, then why would you want to settle on something small? It
Because
has
it,
to be
it meets
grand.
the stockholders' expectations.
Yeah. So here is very good point, right? So this is where here's what I look at it. The approach that I have taken, and from a personal things and for business side as well. You create a grand vision, and like I said, right, you gotta bring everybody along with you. There has to be an alignment, a
Hmm.
stakeholder alignment, there has to be an alignment. But with that alignment, after that, then you have to develop the strategies how we are going to go execute to achieve this vision.
Hmm.
Now, where the discussion should be, and I think this is where the issue is, and I see this in the corporations all the time, is we confuse vision with strategy.
Hmm.
Because if you have to change your vision over and over again, right, then the board of directors, they have to look at themselves like they need to look in the mirror,
That's right.
right? Then the CEO and other top leaders, they have to look in the mirror as well as like, did we actually create the right vision here?
Yeah.
Number one, the people that are selecting the CEO, okay, what are their actual capabilities of actually identifying a CEO? Okay, because most of the time, let's be brutal here, let's be honest here, right? Most of the time the people that are selecting, I am sorry, but they are nothing more than Excel spreadsheet people, that
Yeah.
they don't even know what the reality on the ground is. All they do is they have their Excel models put together, they have a bunch of these analysts, right? They're feeding them garbage information,
Hmm.
and they are making decisions based off of those. Most of the time these metrics are flawed.
Yeah.
Okay.
The data's probably
And
flawed.
right. So when you start to think about, so you're feeding all this information to these people that are literally looking at a spreadsheet, and they're playing on the spreadsheet to see what moves they can make to get the multiples to go higher. Because eventually, what is their goal? That we're going to sell this thing so we can put more money in our and investors pocket. That's the only thing they're looking at. So then they are going to go hire someone who's going to say the right things in the interview to give them that comfort that, hey, I am that guy that is going to get you those multiples that you're looking for.
Yep.
It's okay along the way if I destroy the company. Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
But I'm going to get you your multiple.
Yeah.
Really? I mean, so then we get down to this conversation of, are we hiring leaders, or are we hiring just bunch of people that we are giving them the reins of a company, and we're saying, okay, do whatever you need to do, but get me this one metric.
Yeah. And it's generally unbalanced for continued growth of the company,
Right? Because
short
here
term based.
we have made it so easy. I mean, and this is where the confusion. I mean, this. I mean, sometimes this word leader, right, annoys me because the good ones out there, right, they also get the bad name,
Sure.
because in corporate world we have made it so, first of all, we use word like, if somebody's a CEO or he's a leader. No, he's not. He just has that title, and you gave him a bunch of authority. Leadership has nothing to do with the title,
Hmm.
right? So here's how we made it easy, right? So we brought the new guy in, he's the CEO, he's got some whatever wacky thing that he wants to do. And if you're following that, great. If you're not following that, oh, guess what we're going to do? I'm going to fire you and bring in another person like whatever wacky idea that I have, who aligns with that, and then great. Next thing we know is I'm going to hire a bunch of people like me that don't care about the company, the employees, or anything else. They're just trying to get to that one metric. And it's okay if we destroy the organization along the way. No problem. But I told the board, I'm going to get them these multiples. I'm going to get them these multiples.
Mm-hmm.
And we made it so easy. There is no accountability for the leadership aspect of a position.
Yep.
There is no metric.
No, I think it changes. It's still the touchy-feely piece. I mean, you have the metrics of a company, the P&L sheet, obviously, EBITDA and so forth, and the top line sales growth, and where you sit in the market from a competitive perspective, and the scalability of it. Obviously, the most interesting market, I think, is the high growth, small company high growth markets that are growing at, very high multiples. But once you get to certain levels of growth from a leadership perspective, you have to change the way you're leading that group. So what I found was the leaders that realized that due to the business size and makeup of the company and the competitive nature of the marketplace, they actually said, okay, we're going to pivot, and I go back to my days at GE, and what Welch did is every 18 to 36 months, he pivoted. He did it on purpose because he didn't want to be reacting to the marketplace. He wanted to be ahead of the marketplace. So what his approach was, I'm going to force you to change. Could be 12 months, could be 18 months, could be 36 months. I don't know what it is,
Right.
But we're going to pivot so you can be ahead of the marketplace, because if you don't, you become complacent. And when you say the 2 to 3 years, generally, if you're doing something 2 to 3 years, complacency, there's no way to keep it from coming in. There's no way to prevent it. I don't know if it's just going to come, even under best intentions.
Right.
You will become complacent. So he knew that. So he said, okay, you need to change. And you're like, why? Everything's going well. Well, that's why you got to change, because you're doing well and you're becoming complacent. And so he kept flipping and flipping and flipping. And then everybody's used to flipping visions, strategies every 18, and you become nimble. So then when there is a marketplace, huge change like COVID or something, everybody's like, oh, we're going to change it again. Okay, no big deal. The mindset of every employee in the company is like, oh yeah, we're going to change. And they're ready. They're everybody's, how do we make this work? It's not like, oh no, not me. It's like everybody's used to changing, so they're ready to move. So I thought that was a very genius piece. So if a CEO is looking not to get fired after 3 years, after 2 years, he or she should probably change their vision to get ahead of it, maybe, and possibly get ahead of them getting fired after 3 years, because they're waiting for the board to tell them what to do.
Right.
And they can't wait for a true leader is not going to wait for the board to tell them what to do. The board actually doesn't want to tell them what to do. The board wants them to tell them what to do. Right. And I remember one time when he says, Welch said, the board doesn't tell me anything. I tell them what I'm going to do. And I think there aren't many CEOs out there that are that brash or bold. And the ones that are typically your exemplar companies.
Right.
So you look at the top 10% of the companies, those leaders all say that, something to that effect in some way. Mm-hmm. And they're driving it. So the question is, do you want to be an exemplar company, or do you want to be a follower? Now, only 10% of the companies in the world or in the US are exemplar companies. So can you give me a turnaround story where you turned failure into success?
Sure, sure. I mean, so I'll share two things with you there. Let's start with the business side, right? So, I mean, as you can imagine, anytime you get involved with an organization, the one thing you always have to ask yourself that is there a binding story? Is there a binding vision? Is there something out there that brings everybody together? And I mean, I spent pretty much all of my career in manufacturing, in operations, supply chain. That's so working with this one organization, and here we are, a lot of different locations, lot of different teams. And one thing that is missing the moment I get there is, number one, there is nothing there that is binding people together.
Hmm.
So my very first question to the team was, number one, where are we going, right? So I'm a huge believer in, and I know these tools, they a lot of people use them in different contexts. I'm a lean and Six Sigma guy, right? So I use these tools that I learned 20 years ago. Doesn't matter what role I'm in, I'm always going and pulling those tools out, right?
Yeah,
So
sure.
I'm a huge believer in this 6W2H tool. It's about what, where, how,
Yeah.
so that's what this is about, right? So I always use that too. That's always my starting point.
Okay.
And so the first question I always ask is what. So I asked the question of, like, what are we actually trying to achieve? What are we doing, right? And that tells me that if there is a vision, if there is a mission out there, is there something out there? And when I hear that everybody has their own, there is like five different versions of it floating around. So as a leader, then I have to stop right there,
That's good.
because the very first thing I had to do, so in this particular case, right, so the very first thing we did, we said, okay, let's create a vision that is, we know, is going to be bold enough, right, that is going to make all of us uncomfortable. But then let's make sure that everybody is together. We are all, so the way we did, one thing that we did is kind of interesting. So once we created it, right, then we, believe it or not, we brought in some focus groups,
Hmm. Yeah.
including in those focus groups, we had our associates in there as well.
Hmm.
So this was not just simply the exercise with the executives, and with, it was like we brought in the people that were actually going to make things happen every single day, because they're the one actually truly doing the value added work, right? The rest
Yeah.
of us are just overhead,
Overhead.
right? So we brought people in, and to get their input, and not only get their input, but more importantly, how did they feel about it? Did they have the sense that, hey, this is something that it touches my heart, that I can get behind, right? And then, of course, based off of that feedback, which is wonderful, and then we went and whatever modifications that we needed to make, improvements, whatever, so we did that, right? So we keep going down the steps, right? Then you talk about strategies, then you talk about what are we going to do, how we're going to measure ourselves. So we keep going through that steps. So the long story short, right, so there's two things that happen out of this entire process. Number one is the most obvious one, right, that everybody talks about, which is our financials, our KPIs, they all improved, right? That's that's the story that everybody tells, which is wonderful. Makes board happy, investors happy, everybody happy. But then there was another thing that was, to me, it was far more important, right? And that was the people side. So the metrics that I was the most happy about, okay, those were the metrics when I looked at our turnover, okay? Those are the metrics when I looked at our safety numbers,
Mm-hmm.
okay? The metrics that were about the employee satisfaction side, okay? It's hard to put numbers on those things, like,
It's tough.
it's not dollars and cents, but it's about, and the way I gauge, so everybody does these surveys, right? That I'm gonna go do employee satisfaction surveys or whatever. You know me, I'm a floor person.
Yeah.
Okay. I hate meetings. you know, and especially these PowerPoint presentations, they drive me nuts. I'd rather be right there where things are happening. So you know what my gauge was instead of those satisfaction surveys? Of course, we did the satisfaction surveys, but the way I did my data integrity test, what the survey was telling me, but the actual reality was, whenever I would go to the factory floors, okay, were people smiling?
Oh, that's a good
Were they
one.
saying hi, not only
Yeah.
to me,
But to each other. I agree.
to each other, right?
Yeah.
And then
That's the
I'm a
key.
huge believer in smell of the place,
Absolutely.
right?
100%
So
agree.
was I getting those positive, upbeat vibes or not?
Yeah.
That was my survey. That was my gauge.
I'm 100% with you. That's exactly what I would do.
The way I look at it is whenever I go to the factory floor, how many people are coming in and either giving me a hug or giving me a high five, or just like that they don't recognize the title.
Yeah.
To me, that's wonderful. That is
Mhm.
when I know that what we are doing is the right thing.
That's great. That's great sharing. Couldn't agree with you more. Could not agree with you more.
Because
Wonderful.
the beauty of that is when you get to that point, then when you have to make the tough decision, when you have to take on the biggest challenges, that team will go with you to any battle.
That's right.
They're not going to abandon you
Yeah.
when things get tough. They will not leave you. They will go to the end with you.
That's very well said. Very well said. I love that turnaround, or that whole dialogue was fantastic. Thanks, Assad. Very enlightening. We want to move on to state of the state,
Yeah.
the easy stuff, the world economy.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, I mean it's been some crazy times since COVID, and we're still trying to settle out and settle through. And the soft landing is talked about. We're in an election year, a lot of emotions running crazy right now, but of course we want to be apolitical here. But it is affecting how companies are making decisions because historically, after an election year, the economy shrinks. And that is the general direction of what's going on today, anyways, as we're coming off high GDP of last year, cut in half through the first half of this year. And we're kind of plateauing out. And the Fed is saying we're going to drop interest rates at some point in time here, which the borrowing power for companies will get better. But at the same time, companies have saved up a lot of money over this time, and they're kind of cash rich,
Yeah.
which is unusual in these types of circumstances that we've never seen in the past. Unemployment is fairly low, and you know, as a CEO going into 2025, taking all this into account, what should CEOs be looking for, and how are they managing it from what you've seen, and what are some of your recommendations on how to survive and thrive in 2025?
So can we talk about? I'm going to break that on into two pieces,
Oh, that'd be great.
right? So let's talk about the. I don't even know how to title this thing. Okay, so but let's talk about the who we are first. Okay. So this is going to be. I'm going to tell you a little story here. So before I came to U.S., okay, I went to England.
Hmm.
Okay, lived there for a short period of time. Then I went back to Pakistan. Then I came to U.S. Here's the reason that I'm sharing this story with you, because it's all about the mindset. It's all about knowing who you are. Okay, when I was in England, I found that to be very, very restrictive. Okay, and I found that to be always looking at in a very reductive way, like
Yeah.
but when I came to US, right, it was totally the opposite.
Yeah.
Okay, it was always about this abundance, a mindset of abundance. It was always about, I am going to figure out a way to be successful. I am going to figure out a way to make other people successful. So it was never. So I use this example all the time. I know you heard other people use this example as well. Is here's what the difference was, right? If there are other countries you go to, somebody's driving a nice car. In US, the response will be, one day I will have this car as well. You admire the car, the person who's driving the car, and then you say, one day I will have this car as well. Okay, I have seen this in many other countries, and you can tell the difference, right? How good they are going to be. Is a lot of mindset in the other part of the world is, he's driving that car, I want to see that tomorrow he doesn't have that car.
Ah,
Okay,
yeah.
is the opposite mindset, is the mindset of reduction, is the
Hmm.
mindset of, why this other guy has, since I don't have it, why does he have it? So I'll make sure that he doesn't have it either.
Hmm.
Versus our mindset in US has always been of, hey, that is great. Okay, now let me figure out a way, how can I get one of those, right? Because we never had this narrow mindset. We always, and that was the thing that I always loved about this place, is that you always had this growth, this big mindset. And it's, in US we never got anything easy. I mean, look at the
Right.
history of US. We always had to fight for things.
Yeah.
Okay, so but we were never afraid of that.
Yeah.
It was always like, okay, I gotta, hey, I like that, I want to get that, so I'm gonna go work for it, I'm gonna try to achieve that. Okay, so why am I saying that today? The question that you asked about economy, here is what I see that reductive, that narrowness mindset creeping in our corporate America. And when I say that the what is happening with the economy, we both know it's a cycle.
That's a
It
cycle.
goes up, it goes
It goes
down, it
down.
goes up, and it goes down.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is different this time? Nothing,
Right.
right? It's gonna go down, it's gonna go through, it's an election year, right?
It's gonna
Then
go up.
after
Yeah.
that, it's gonna follow some
It doesn't
cycle,
matter what the politics are.
right? Then you're going to have it, it'll go come back up.
Yeah.
Interest rates are high right now,
They're coming down.
they're going to come down, right? Inflation is high right now, it will stabilize itself.
Yeah.
It always goes through these ups and downs. It is
Yeah.
what it is, right?
Yeah.
But now here is a thing that a CEO can do. Okay, you can have a kind of a narrow, very reductive type of mind, or you can have a very growth oriented mind. Because
Yep.
here is an opportunity. to figure out a way to reinvent yourself.
You got it. Absolutely.
That's so when we think about 2025, if I can share, any type of recommendation with the executives of these companies, take advantage of this
Yep.
and go figure out a way who you are and the vision that you have, is that vision still valid?
Mm-hmm.
But because things are changing. I mean, I know, we talk a lot about this whole AI thing, but truly, I mean, I'm a huge fan of it. It truly is changing how we think, how we behave, how do we interact with things. It truly is changing. So you have to ask yourself, that vision that I had, the strategy that I had, is that still valid?
Mm-hmm.
Or should I go back and reinvent myself?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's number one, that go back and focus on R&D, focus on innovation, go focus on those things, because that is going to get you that growth. It drives me nuts when I see that there are executives, there are CEOs out there that they think that they are going to get to prosperity by cost cutting. You're not,
Yeah. One of my pet peeves. You cannot
right?
cut your way to prosperity. That
You
is,
don't,
no,
right?
nobody has ever achieved that. No
No,
one.
even, I mean, I know, I'm telling you, this is it's a personal thing. Now I'm going to share a little personal thing here, right? Have you ever seen someone become rich by saving money? No. The only way that you will be rich is when you focus on growth,
Yeah.
when you start to change your earning potentials. That's the only way you become rich. Why would that be any different in business?
Yeah. I
If you
love that.
keep cutting costs,
Changing. Yeah, I love that, changing your earning potential. I think that's a key phrase that to take away from that, what you just said. That's beautifully said.
right? It's the
Yeah.
same for the companies.
Yeah.
And what a better time right now, as you said, a lot of company, they're holding a lot of cash.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you can sit on that cash and let it devalue, because we know cash devalues, right? You can let it just do that and just kind of feel good that I have some cash sitting, you know. Or you can say, I'm going to take some of that cash and I'm going to invest in R&D. I'm going to figure out what innovations that we can be doing, right? You can go figure yourself out, reinvent yourself, right? So that's one thing, right? And then the second thing is, please, please, please have the growth mindset. Do not look at, and this drives me nuts. I know politicians are what they are. This fear thing. Give me a break, right? We keep talking about, oh, China is going to do this, or then you have this other country, they're going to do that. It's like, who gives a darn? They always do what they do,
Yeah. That's
right?
uncontrollable.
Exactly. Go focus on the things that you can control. Go focus on the things that make you who you are, right? So if we go down this path of, hey, there are a lot of countries out there, they can manufacture things really cheap, right? Okay, well, if this was only about just, having the ability to manufacture things really cheap, right? Okay, well, what about the overall cost of the supply chain, right? You and I, we talked about this, it's like, yeah, if you look at only that one small piece, labor may be cheap in some other countries,
Mm-hmm.
great, but the moment you get out of that labor part, then what happens? You've got to bring stuff all the way over. There's a lot of different things that you
Yeah.
have to consider. So instead of worrying about, oh my God, there is a lot of cheap labor at other places, how am I going to compete? Why don't you focus on the things that are going to show that the product that you make is far superior,
Yeah.
right? The product that you make is relevant to today,
Mm-hmm.
and let other places, other countries make the stuff that you don't want to deal with, you don't want to make.
Yeah.
Let them do that. But focus on the premium things that you can do. Why don't you focus on that? That's the part is like, why are we're always afraid of like what other countries gonna do? It's like, really? You got nothing else to worry about?
Yeah, I guess along those lines is just what I've seen is, U.S. is becoming more service dependent than manufacturing dependent, no doubt about. It's like the highest, most of our revenue comes in from service versus manufacturing. I think what I think with the reshoring effort to Mexico or nearshoring efforts, and probably maybe onshoring at some point in time will take place, that's going to upset the supply chains, and a lot of companies are going to have to change the way they're doing business as manufacturing gets uprooted from that perspective. So how do organizations and leaders that are making a lot of different goods and are dependent on the raw materials coming in, or the processed raw materials coming in, seeing that the U.S. doesn't control the largest volume of those raw materials, it's actually controlled by China. How do you manage those situations from a CEO or from an organization perspective? Because that transitions, it's here. After COVID, it made it loud and clear it had to happen, and now after 2 or 3 years, it's happening now, and supply chains are completely different. So, what are your thoughts there?
Right. So there is this thing called, the train has already left the station,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Because you have to give credit to China, where
Yeah,
they have made some very good strategic moves,
they have, and they continue to make them.
right? So we got to acknowledge that. Now
Yeah.
the question is, right, what are some of the options that we have? Okay. In my mind, one of the things that we can do is, where is still opportunity, is we can find ways to collaborate. Personally, I would change two things. Number one, I would change the political narrative. Let's not do this fear mongering.
Mm-hmm.
There's plenty of third world countries out there that are really good at it. Let them do this thing. That is not who America is. Let's not do that.
Yeah.
Right? Let's not say let's fear China or any other. Like, why? Come on,
Yeah.
right? But we're in 2024. We have passed that. Okay, we are much better people, hopefully, right? So we have to, as a country, and we need to hold our political leaders accountable for this. That let's stop this fear mongering. Let's stop this narrative. Let's try to create a narrative that encourages collaboration, encourages coalitions, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
number one. Then the number two is, let's talk about the warfare. Okay? Future wars are not fought with planes and tanks and ships.
Yeah.
They're fought through other means,
Yes, that's right.
right? Fifth generation warfare does not rely a lot on the ships and the guns and the tanks. So we as a country, and I'm not naive, the only way anybody will play with you is that if you also have a stick.
Yeah.
So then we should be asking ourselves that, how well are we on the fifth generation war? Can we win that war?
Mm.
And are we thinking about beyond the fifth generation war?
Mm-hmm.
So if we talk about defense, that's if I was the leader, that's how I would be approaching it. Let's not worry about how many tanks I got. That's now the new war. Let's focus on, are we able to do the new war?
So that may be a good segue to artificial intelligence,
Sure.
because that's the final frontier, so to speak. as we know it. Obviously, the U.S. is leading the world today in that technology, although a lot of the chips and things are being made overseas and so forth, but we're controlling the growth and the development of artificial intelligence, which will definitely change everything in the next 5 to 10 years.
Right.
And a lot of companies, a lot of CEOs are asked, how are they implementing artificial intelligence?
So I'm a huge believer. I'm embracing it because I think it's a wonderful thing. One time we were trying to kind of map out the timeline, how long it was going to take from the idea to the market,
Mm-hmm.
and we mapped it out. I was personally shocked that it was 2.5 years,
That's typical.
right? And I'm
That's
like, well,
typical.
by
Yeah.
that time, what you're going to put in the market, the people are not even going to want it anymore because the idea has already, the trend has already passed.
Yeah. It's about a 90% attrition rate on ideas, and it takes 2.5 to 3 years for most product cycles. That's
Right?
pretty typical. But what I've seen in AI is there are companies using AI already to shorten that time frame from there's one company that shortened their new product development cycle from they were already pretty good at a year and a half, and they got it down to 3 months. And so, to your point, there are companies using AI to do that right now, and so you went through the prototyping stage that you would used to have to make physical full life versions, then modeling types. Now with AI, you can come up with even much more than Gen AI, by the way. Gen
Right.
AI is just a small part of AI. Just
Mm-hmm. Right.
it's a very empowering one, but it gives you an idea of what
Right.
it's just a small piece, but there's so much more. So, these companies are doing all sorts of things. So this is going to change the MPI arena dramatically.
Right. No, you're right. I mean, that's the point, right? I mean, if
Mm-hmm.
you embrace this new way of approaching things through AI, all of a sudden, I mean, you start to shrink a lot of these processes that in the past took forever and ever and ever, right? So there's a lot of benefit of embracing these type of things, and the other piece of it, not, I mean, we are supply chain manufacturing operations people, right? And so here is some of the stories I'll share with you, right? I mean, just think about one of the biggest issues when you go to a factory, right? One of the biggest issues is the darn equipment broke down,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's the most obvious one.
Yeah. Well, you don't want to blame it on the people. It's got to be the equipment.
But here's the thing, though, right? Is like, okay, well, the darn thing broke down. Okay, well, now I'm going to take 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, whatever it is. But if you let this AI help you, it will help you before you ever even get close to the darn thing breaking down and
Yep.
shutting you down unexpectedly.
Yeah. And generally, that requires you to do things that are counterintuitive to the way you're doing it today. So
Right.
it may be increasing maintenance cycles
Right.
in order to get greater throughput. Things that we know from being, you know, revamping many manufacturing floors. We know that, when you drive a line until it breaks, it actually costs you more than doing the preventive maintenance. But a lot of factories don't run that way, and it's very hard to convince people to change their ways.
So I'm going to add another piece to it.
Okay.
And a lot of executives are going to hate me for I'm sorry to say this, but it is what it is, right?
They'll
So
love you. Don't worry.
I hear this all the time of leading indicator and lagging indicators, right?
Mm.
First of all, 99% of the people don't even understand what that actually means,
Yeah.
right? But it is what it is. But if you're so kind of drawn to these leading indicators, because that's the buzzword, right? Everybody wants, well, guess what? I'm even giving you something better than the leading indicators. Because here you have a technology that not only going to predict what is going to happen, but it has the ability to course correct.
That's right.
Because your leading indicators that you keep talking about, all they're going to tell you is that, hey, there is a probability of some event going to happen. Wouldn't it be great that instead of just letting you know that some event sometime is going to happen in the future, that the darn thing is smart enough to actually take care of that event, so you don't even have to. So that's the power of AI. So the message to the executives out there is, if you don't know anything about it, just think of this way. Here is a question for a supply chain officer, right? You have only 8 hours in a day. Okay. You can tell me, like, oh, I'm going to work 24/7. Sure. Okay, if that's your choice. But now let's talk about the quality of time that you're going to spend in a day to do something for your organization to make it grow and thrive. Okay. Here's your choice you have as a chief supply chain officer. You can continue to waste your brain cells on things like, oh my God, that ship that was coming, or that container that was coming from China, something happened and now it's going to be, a month late, and it's going to shut down that line right there. And then that customer is going to be unhappy with me, right? Or, that price of that commodity went up, and oh my God, now what? So you can keep burning your brain cells on those type of things. So guess how much energy and brain cells you're going to have left to actually truly do what you're being paid to do? Not a whole lot, right? Wouldn't it be wonderful that you actually allow this AI to take all those headaches away from you, so you truly have the time to think about how you're going to reinvent the supply chain? How you're going to make sure, right, that these collaborations that we were talking about earlier with the right partners are set in the right way? How you're going to make sure that you are partnering with your sales and marketing team and with your innovation team to make sure that the products that are going to the market, they're going to go to the market really fast, because we're not going to. Now you have the energy to go work on those things versus burning all your brain cells on figuring out, why did that negotiation didn't go well, or where your shipping container from China is.
Mm-hmm.
This is where AI can do wonderful things for you. It can allow you to do the true human things that we meant to do, which is use the brain.
Well said, Assad. Well said. With that, I think that's a great way to end our talk today on leadership and a little bit about the state of the business. I want to thank you, Assad, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to discuss these hot topics and making this very fun and engaging. Any closing comments from you?
No, I really appreciate it. This was certainly wonderful, and I had a great time as well. Hopefully, we're going to promote some new thoughts, some new way of looking things. That's my goal. It's always planting a seed. So hopefully that we have planted few seeds today.
Absolutely. It's all about planting seeds, making new connections, and driving forward for growth for us
That's
all.
it. That's it.
All right. Thanks again, Assad.